What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Bitchuation Room podcast. Very live, very here, a little late. I'll explain why in a bit, but I'm here and super excited to have you guys. So thankful for you to join me in this weekly quest at, preserving a little space for us. Just some we time. You know what I'm saying? Just to have a few laughs, look at how the world's going to hell in a handbasket, and then wrap it all up with a game and get the F out of here. But no, if you are here on YouTube or Twitch, thank you so much for being here. Make sure you are subscribed to this channel and supporting it. If you are here as a podcast, oh my God, why don't you leave this podcast 5 stars? Because we bring you weekly guests like comedian Jena Friedman, who is joining me in a few, and Olayemi Olurin, who is a movement lawyer, a public defender, who's going to be breaking down why we should all be prison abolitionists. Yes, I said it. All right. If this doesn't convert you in the next hour, you lost. You might as well become a cop. No, I kid, but she is so badass when it comes to this topic, from her personal experience, from her work. And I'm so lucky and thankful that she decided to join me today. So remember to like all the like buttons and click all the click buttons, whatever. And for the bonus, for the patrons, for the Frantifa, I'm going to be doing a solo stream about what's going on in China right now. There are protests that are breaking out, and they are, I believe, arguably very understandable. But I want to get into it and some of those nuances and some of my thoughts on that. So make sure you are a patron. Patreon.com/Bitchuation Room is where you can go. Remember, this show is ad-free 99% of the time, and independent. So like it's just us, baby. It's just you and the $5 to $10 to $20 a month, whatever you can give a month. It's a labor of love, as well as there's paid labor too. I have people who help. Paige and Max are wonderful. Anywho, the point is this. There's all kinds of perks. There's merch. There's all the things. So become a patron right now. What are you waiting for, guys? Get your ass on over there. Or you can tip the show TBR-live on Venmo, TBR live on Cash App. And don't forget, we're going to be live in San Francisco at Sketchfest on January 22nd at 8 p.m. Nato Green will be there. I will be there. I believe we're doing some stand-up. I've got a lot of writing to do. and then we will dig into, it's not clear who our guest is going to be, but working on a big special guest, I guess, is what I want you to know. So get your goddamn tickets. sfsketchfest.com, I believe, is where you can get that. And thank you so much, all y'all, for sounding off in the comments and in your brains to yourself on your walk or brushing your teeth or whatever you're doing while you're listening to this, because this is the week where. No, it's not. This is What Are You Bitching About? And for What Are You Bitching About, I have to bring in my guest for the next little bit, stand-up comedian, creator of Soft Focus on Adult Swim, writer on The Daily Show and Borat 2, and most recently host and director of Indefensible on AMC Plus, which everyone should be watching right now. Jena Friedman. Jena, I have to bring you in for this segment of what we're bitching about because I feel like it might be the same thing.
Although, yeah, I should have gotten like a light on my face. I was like, I just put the baby down. I was like nursing him, and I was like, I gotta go. And then when you delatch them, I'm like, is he gonna be an incel? Do you know what I mean?
Because you delatch, dude. Okay, so Jena has
everyone who gives like an incel comment, they were maybe like delatched from their mom prematurely, and they hate women. That's my thesis. Okay, I'll let you go.
Darling, first of all, don't put that on us. You just have an entire stand-up special about how it's actually, well, it actually is mother's fault, but it's not. You said it ironically. No, so Jena's got a what, 7-week-old?
6-week-old. Yeah.
Francesca has a 7.5, almost 8-week-old. Or maybe I can't remember.
I like how you talk about yourself in the third person because it's like so like you almost have to disassociate to do it to be a mom. That it's like too much.
Exactly. Yes, I am. It's a story. If I tell it as a story, it feels like less like I'm living every insane moment. But so I wanted to bitch about nursing, which is I think exactly what Jen and I both just did. And that delatching is very real. Like my baby, first of all, if men could get pregnant, fill in blank, and we've been saying this like all the time, if men couldn't get pregnant, they would not be pregnant because abortions would be free and on demand and everywhere. But if they chose to, like we've chosen to, nursing is not something I think men would ever fucking partake in. They would use formula and then sell their breast milk on the black market.
Yeah, I mean there must be a pill where they can lactate. I'm like trying to fix my hair, and then I'm like, it's a lost cause. I'm just like,
you look great.
I think this is one of his derpy. Okay, I think that there must be a pill where men can lactate.
Wait.
What?
Yeah. No, I mean, we just
they have nipples too. There should be. I think we just need more women in STEM to develop more ways that the burden can be taken off of us because
Absolutely.
It's a lot.
First of all, nursing, yes, it is. There's bonding. It's incredible that you can do it. Like that's sort of why I do it, is because I'm like, hell yeah, dude, I just turn blood into milk in my own body. But it's also incredibly time consuming. Babies take forever on the boob. They like cry, they shit when your nipple is in their mouth, they tear at your nipple when they're like trying to get off of it. And so like what my kid does is like I'll put my finger to try and delatch her because she'll start to delatch, but she bites down harder when I'm trying to get her off. So you kind of just have to like not get her off, just go with it and be like, I hope it's an easy one this time, you know?
Yeah, last night it was like the most painful bite. I mean, okay, so no one wants to hear about this. I did stand up for the first time since I taped my special last night, and it was like a parody of a mom doing stand up for the first time. It was awful. I had no jokes. I was just trying to get my sea legs and back on stage, and I was just like not funny. But like just for your sake, like, so I thought no one's gonna like this but you, and we should just call each other not while we're being recorded. But I told you that I like thought I had mastitis, and then the baby went on that boob, because like if you have a breast infection, the advice is put the baby on that to suck it out. Like it's like all the advice is so patronizing and condescending. They're like, oh, your nipples hurt, put breast milk on that. Like what other injuries do we put breast milk on? None. It's like just let us just give us antibiotics, like give us medicine. Like, oh, you're postpartum depression. Did you try putting breast milk on that?
If you put breast milk on your C-section wound, it'll heal.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it's like. But he did go in there like a little plumber. Like he like went in and he bit on it. I was like, and like twisted his head, and then the mastitis was gone.
Really?
Yeah.
See, this is where I started.
I told you this actually.
You did, and my response was like, well, actually, the female body does an amazing job. And I went into this whole like magical, like our boobs are magical and breast milk is magical, which is I think exactly what we're also making fun of. But But all to say, it's a fuck ton of work because it's also like the burping, the soothing, the changing, then the doing the other side, the whole, it's a lot. And yes, there's always formula, and yes, there's always pumping, and yes, etc. and blah, 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 blah. But like, even that, it's almost just easier just to be like, done.
Yeah, he does. No, I know. This isn't going to be online after this, is it?
Oh, it lives forever.
Please don't. I don't want to remember this moment in my life.
This podcast is going to, I know. This is only going to be we're going to be bitching about motherhood podcast. And for those of you who don't care, suck it up, just like you did on your mom's teat, because everyone came into this world the same way.
I just can't believe it's so, like, I didn't know until I was 3 months pregnant that you have to breastfeed like 24 hours. Like, you have to breastfeed like every 2 to 3 hours around the clock. No one talked about that. And I consider myself like pretty up on women's health. And I had no idea about breastfeeding because nobody talks about it, because it's so, I remember like before I got pregnant, like walking in the airport and seeing like a breast pumping station and being like, haha, that's weird. Like I had no idea, but I'm about to go on a flight tomorrow and I'm going to be like I'm going to be pumping on my flight, not even just so that I don't get a huge breast infection.
Right. And you can now travel with as much breast milk as you want. So
tell that to ISIS, because
yep, exactly. If you're listening, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. No, it's you'd be a perfect foil for ISIS as well,
Thank you.
Blonde, new mom.
Years before I was talking about breastfeeding, I had a bit on the internet where there was this terrorist who was very cute, Omar Hamami. He died.
Okay.
And he was like from Alabama, and there was a New York Times piece called Jihadist Next Door about how he became radicalized. And he was kind of, I think, one of like the sexiest jihadists. Anyway, I made a video.
What made him sexy? Like nice facial hair?
Yeah, like the cheekbones. I'll send you a picture of him. He was very good looking. Structure. Crazy eyes, but good looking. I'm actually going to send you we should throw up a photo of him. Very good looking. But I made this like video like called Jihad Meant Hello, and I was like joking, because I think we were doing a live show and I was like looking for like some content to show everybody before the show, and I just made this little video, and I left it on YouTube, and it went viral in 2009. Version of viral. It was like people thought it was real. They didn't think I was
joking about it. Yeah,
joking about it, and then I took it offline because like my mom, I was like very excited, and I called my mom and it made her cry, and so she made me take it offline because I was like, "Look, Mom, I'm getting attention for being a comedian," and she saw it and she was like, "Oh my God, take this offline."
Did you?
Mm-hmm. I can't find it. I think I had. Yeah, I can't find it anymore. But
that's good of you. I mean, there's always that. I think you lusting over a jihadist is the funniest way.
I didn't know how I got on that.
It's the funniest way to get canceled. Oh, yeah. I don't know why.
I would be a good foil for ISIS. I was like, how did I get on that topic? Oh yeah, because like there was a time when like like they were like blonde white women were going over to ISIS and getting for their Nutella. They would like be like, come join
it's like
ISIS.
Their gap
we have
year.
Nutella. Yeah, their Rumspringa. But yeah, thank you, I guess is what I'm saying. Still got it.
Well, good luck on the flight and pumping away, and he'll be fine. Do not worry. But I wanted to. That is what we're bitching about, guys. Nursing. I hope that's okay, Jena. That I just put words in your mouth, like the boob in your mouth.
No, I know. I'm completely incoherent right now. I don't see people. I really shouldn't be on camera. You're just my friend, so I'm talking to you. But
you look great, and also this is a podcast too. So
they say that, but everything online lives
is
online.
Now.
Yeah, people have gotten fired from SNL over podcasts, so
Right, and exactly. But does anyone?
Okay, it's
oh my God! Wait a minute.
Not a good photo of him. That's
Paige
not a good photo of him. He's blurry. You need a better photo of him when he's older.
Okay, Paige, if you're listening to the podcast, Paige just put up 2 photos of this jihadist, and he doesn't look that good, but I could see it.
No, he doesn't. There's a better. You need maybe the video of him.
Okay. TBD. Everyone look that up when you in your spare time.
I'm telling you, he's sexy. His soccer photo when he was like a kid, not hot. But you're right. That was what they put on the New York Times. I remember it like it was yesterday.
You were like, that does not do him justice. Mm-mm. I mean, I know he killed people, but We're going to talk about men killing, well, women specifically a little bit, because we're going to talk about Jena's show, and I'm really excited to get into it. But first, we have to get into more unpleasant things and different things that happened this week. So let's do it. President Biden living up to his status quo Joe name by calling on Congress to block the strike of 100,000 rail workers, not only stabbing unions in the back, which Biden supposedly champions, but also stabbing his love of trains in the back. And let's just say this is a very defining moment for rail workers, but also Thomas the Tank Engine. Like, can we just think of him right now? He's actually not even Thomas the Tank Engine anymore. He now goes by Thomas the Tanky, and he just got a tat of Stalin on his caboose. So way to radicalize them. He just got an invite to go on the Jimmy Dore show also. Former Trump attorney has outdone every right-winger's "The Conversation Isn't About Gun Control" song and dance that happens after a mass shooting, Jena Ellis, by saying that, let's redo that. Former Trump attorney Jena Ellis has outdone every right-winger's "The Conversation Isn't About Gun Control" song and dance that happens after a mass shooting by saying that the victims of the Club Q massacre were, quote, reaping the consequences of eternal damnation because there was no evidence that the victims were Christian. Wow. Except there's also no evidence that God exists, you dry cunt. A judge has ordered that the Amazon Corporation read a public notice to its workers of the unionized in the New York warehouse JFK 8, in which it commits to end union busting and retaliatory practices. I love this. I hope that they're have a list of words that they can't use in this public notice. Like, they can't say partner or associate or team member or family or value. Just say worker. Just, why can't people call workers workers? Like, if they stopped devaluing the title, it would actually sound good if you actually paid people. There's no joke here. I just want to say that Amazon's going to be unionized. Like, tarde or temprano, as they say. It's only a matter of time. It's not when, but if. Or if, but when. Melania's one-woman war on Christmas is over. That's right. The blood-soaked trees have been replaced by Jill Biden's adorable decor, complete with a gingerbread house and a We the People theme. It's pretty fucking cute, you guys. I want everyone to know that and look it up later along with the jihadist. Say what you will, though, about Melania's rebellion on Christmas. I think it was feminist as fuck, guys, if you don't remember.
Who gives a about Christmas stuff and decoration, but I need to do it, right?
Yeah, but 100%. You have no choice.
But she resisted, though. I mean, I think that's more feminist than Jill Biden just playing into the patriarchal role of FLOTUS, right? Just being like, who gives a fuck about Christmas? Trees covered in blood. The San Francisco Police Department is facing backlash over news they will be using robots capable of lethal force on suspects. SFPD clarified, however, that robots won't be armed with firearms, but they'll be armed with bombs. It's much more of an ISIS terrorist rather than a domestic mass shooter one. Really top of the line robotics here. These bots are like the Roombas of police terrorism, y'all. So don't worry. And finally, the Senate runoff in Georgia is just a week away. And I think Raphael Warnock has a huge advantage. I'm just going to say that. And that's because the state also just reinstated its 6-week abortion ban. And Herschel Walker is scrambling to pay for those last few nuts he let bust.
Am I supposed to talk? I'm still on camera.
You're so welcome to talk, but I'm about to get into, if you want to say something, please say it.
Oh, no, I just want to compliment you on your camouflage, your breast milk camouflage t-shirt. Or blouse. Sorry,
it's a onesie, and I've decided that moms should only wear onesies because they button up, and you don't have to think about two things. You just one thing.
I'm wearing the shirt that you recommended.
Jenna's wearing a nursing tank yes.
Which is a racket, by the way. I know we actually are talking about news. I'm sorry to keep going back to this one topic because my brain is not functioning right now. We're just such targets for everything. This is just a tank top that you could just pull down. I like it and I get it, but I think all this stuff is unnecessary.
Meaning you should just have titties out, or it shouldn't be as expensive.
No, I
as
think
it
shouldn't be $70. When you could just get a tank top for $20, it's the same thing, and just go like that instead of be I'm gonna unclip it. You know what I mean?
And yet you bought it.
Well, because you told me to, and you were right in terms of.
Well, because most nursing shit just makes you look awful. It's like, okay, it just like it's super like long. You know how tank tops are long. Anyway, the point
If I
is,
have
Jena,
a second jacket on and I need to pop my tit out, it's helpful.
for sure. But yes, you could just pull down a tank top and be like, here you go.
Or pull up a tank top.
But it's just extra material all around. We'll debate this later.
I'm ruining your show today.
No, but for everything else, hang on. This is the week where. Okay, we got to talk about Kanye and Trump, and then we'll talk about Jena's show. But if you thought you had to deal with your racist relatives on Thanksgiving, Mar-a-Lago has got you beat, although there was no one who had a problem with anything that happened at this Thanksgiving dinner. Best Thanksgiving dinner, honestly, the most accurate when it comes to like in the vein of the original Thanksgiving, where like, you know, white people handed a bunch of blankets with smallpox to native populations that were basically just trying to keep them from starving. And they were like, thank you, fuck you. Because this was a Thanksgiving dinner between Donald Trump, Kanye West, Nick Fuentes, who, if you don't know who that is, good. Your virgin ears are about to be contaminated right now. And Milo Yiannopoulos and a woman named Karen Giorno, who used to work on the Trump campaign. Again, Nick Fuentes, this is the big problem, is Nick Fuentes, because he is an open and avowed white nationalist. I don't want to go into like how much shit he said, what he believes, but he's terrible. He's disgusting. He's a like raging misogynist. And they all had a dinner. And at this dinner, everyone had different goals, I guess. But it seems like Kanye West was there to ask Donald Trump if he would be his running mate in 2024. That's right. A source familiar with the dinner said the dinner grew heated after Ye, who announced another run for president in 2024 on Thursday, asked Trump to be his running mate. Trump then began insulting Ye's ex-wife, Kim Kardashian, according to the source, and a video that Ye posted to Twitter on Thanksgiving Day recounting the dinner. I just don't know why we're calling him Ye when his name is Kanye West, but I guess that's a made-up name too. I don't know. It's fine.
He's like cokey. Maybe that's why. Isn't that like yay, like a slang for cocaine?
Oh, yeah. The yayo.
Yeah.
Rush, get the yayo. Okay, so that's what happened. Let me just play that video. This is Kanye West's announcement video for 2024, and also him recounting that he felt disrespected at this Thanksgiving dinner.
I think the thing that Trump was most perturbed about, me asking him to be my vice president, I think that was like lower on the list of things that caught him off guard. It was the fact that I walked in with intelligence. So Trump is really impressed with Nick Fuentes. And Nick Fuentes, unlike so many of the lawyers and so many people that he was left with on his 2020 campaign, he's actually a loyalist. When he didn't know what the lawyers is, you'll still have your lawyer list. And when all the lawyers said, forget it, Trump's done, there were loyalists running up in the White House, right? And my question would be, why, when you had the chance, did you not free the January 6ers? And I came to him as someone who loves Trump, and I said, go and get Corey back. Go and get these people that the media tried to cancel and told you to step away from. He basically gives me this would-be mob-esque kind of story, talking to some kid from the south side of Chicago trying to sound mobby or whatever. He goes into the story about all that he went through to get Alice Johnson out of jail and how he didn't do it for Kim, but he did it for me. But then he goes on to say that Kim is a and you can tell her I said that. And I was thinking, like, that's the mother of my children. Since we know, and all the Christians in America that love Trump know that Trump is a conservative, we're going to demand that you hold all policies directly to the Bible. When Trump started basically screaming at me at the table, telling me I was going to lose, I mean, has that ever worked for anyone in history?
You're going to lose. Tell him he's going to lose.
I'm like, well, hold on, Trump. You're talking to Ye.
Perfect.
Oh, so much to unpack. But
There's something happening. I don't want to just chalk it up to the simulation, but there are all these like really, it's, I can't process it yet. Everything we just watched, I can't process it.
So, for those listening, Kanye is with Milo Yiannopoulos. I know. I thought the right canceled him when he was like, "Yeah, it's okay to have sex with minors," and they were like, "Ee," but he's back, and Kanye. Then you have to know that the part that was bleeped out, like then he started calling my wife a bleep bleep bleep, and you're like, "What is?" He says, "Disgusting human," which isn't a slur, not nice, but is not a cuss word, which was very funny to me. And then there's like different images of like MAGA people, January Sixers. All in all, Jena, that is what mental illness looks like more than anything else.
And that's Milo with him, right?
That is Milo
like
Yiannopoulos.
The haircut, yeah.
Exactly. Just being like, oh yeah, just like his like little yes man. And so here was Trump. So that was Kanye's version of the dinner. Here's Trump's version of the dinner. He tweeted or bleated, as John Idarola likes to say, on Truth Social. Ye, formerly known as Kanye West, was asking me for advice concerning his difficulties, in particular having to do with his business. So what was he like? How can I do anti-Semitism and keep my Adidas deal? Maybe like what was that conversation? They probably were just being anti-Semitic together. We also discussed to a lesser extent politics, where I told him he should definitely not run for president. Any voters you may have should vote for Trump. Anyway, we got along great. He expressed no anti-Semitism, in case you were wondering, like I just was. I appreciated all the nice things he said about me on Tucker Carlson. Why wouldn't I agree to meet? Also, I didn't know Nick Fuentes. Jena, so like I just want you to know that like I had a great Thanksgiving dinner and got together with Matt's family and it was really great and like no anti-Semitism was expressed at all. Anyway, how are you?
Oh, it's just it doesn't end. It's like we have to not give them oxygen, but it's I don't think it's possible at this point.
I know it's funny because I've been thinking about this incident and thinking about Kanye running for president, and I'm like, I think he could win. But I do think that the fact that he is a Black American and he's not like a Herschel Walker Black American who is basically being essentially like marionetted into this whole thing and being told what to do and is effectively subservient to it. Like Kanye is a loose cannon, so the GOP would never get behind him, but he could definitely win. He's as crazy as Trump is.
I think if Kanye were white, the GOP would get behind him.
Yes, that is a shorthand.
Because Trump, I think, is more insane in a lot of ways than Kanye, or has proven to be, I think.
Does Kanye's anti-Semitism disqualify or entice
I think
him?
he's just doing it for attention. I think artists, especially at his level, know how to get attention, and that is the way to get attention, and it has been since the dawn of social media. What I guess not rises to the top, but sinks to the bottom is like the most like depraved, deplorable content, and anti-Semitism's right up there. So I think he's just doing it to get a rise out of people.
Yeah, a rise out of people. Well, it's what's interesting is, and this is, you know, I think he's doing it to get a rise out of people, but I think he legitimately is convinced, like I think a lot of anti-Semites are convinced, that he's got some shit figured out about the Jews. Like he straight up is, and he does not consider at all the fact that he's in the entertainment industry, and yes, Jewish people disproportionately make up a large portion of the entertainment industry for a lot of historic reasons.
For the reason that they were precluded from other industries.
Exactly.
Because of anti-Semitism.
Yes, also wrote every Christmas song imaginable. So, but he's putting the pieces together, and now he's associating himself with a bunch of just white nationalists who don't have any respect for the Black community. They like their figureheads whose job it is to throw the entire Black community under the bus, like Candace Owens, like Kanye West. But this is really funny because there's another guy. Again, I'm glad if you don't know who this person is. His name is Tim Pool. He's a podcaster, YouTuber, whatever, has millions of subscribers. He basically is like a 13-year-old, a 40-year-old in like a 13-year-old's body. And Kanye West and Nick Fuentes went on Tim Pool's show, and Kanye West was like there to do anti-Semitism. He was like, me and my homie Fuentes, we're both open anti-Semites. Let's go on Tim Pool. Let's spread the good gospel of how the Jews run everything. And watch Tim Pool kind of hedge on it and be like, oh, I don't, anyway, I still want some advertisers on my show, or not we don't do that here necessarily. And Kanye walks out on him. Take a look.
Been extremely unfair to you, I think.
Who is they, though? We can't say who they is, can we?
Press. I'm not using I don't use the word as the way I guess you guys use. I'm talking.
It is
about
them, though, isn't it? I mean, because because when you think about it, consider it. In 2018.
What do you mean it's not?
What do I mean? Like, okay, so how about? Are you leaving?
Are you afraid of the press?
He's gone. I'll say it right now. You guys want to bring that stuff up, and then
have
think
the
we're not going to have a conversation.
Like have the discussion.
Like you think he's going to come in here and say, "Here's my pain, here's my suffering." I'm going to say, "I hear you," and then he's going to say, "And it was Jewish people," and I'm going to be like, "Okay, but don't you consider?" So I'm not going to do this. I refuse.
That's exactly what happened, because you're a fucking nobody, Tim Pool, and like mentally unstable anti-Semite Kanye West doesn't go on your stupid show to like beat around the bush. He's there to do anti-Semitism. Why do you think he's fucking hanging out with you guys? It's like, it's time. He's dying on this hill. You gonna die with him? Anyway,
I mean, I hope he's dying on that hill. I don't know. I think even covering anti-Semitism, there's like a lot of naivete on everybody's end of just like people thinking that words don't lead into action and that people aren't as impressionable as they are, when we've seen time and time again with racism, anti-Semitism, that words matter and they actually can kill.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I don't know. It's so scary right now. I mean, it's always been scary in different ways, but it feels weirdly scary because because it's happening. It's hard to understand the forces at play.
Yeah, I mean, it's
like, didn't Roger Stone set Kanye up to be in this situation that he's in, where he's kind of like this pundit of the right? Didn't Roger Stone have something to do with that?
I mean, I don't doubt it. I don't know specifically. I know Candace Owens and Charlie Kirk basically tried to butter him up for a while. Kanye West a while ago, and Candace Owens was with Kanye wearing his White Lives Matter shirt, I mean,
they're just grifters who want attention, and this is how they're getting it. Because we're talking about it too, and it's not you. It's just like, how do people cover what's going on now without covering this? But that's really, I think, what it comes down to. I think these people have made careers out of shocking other people and just sucking up all the oxygen in the room, and it works for them. So why stop? So they're going to continue. And when it's not anti-Semitism, then it's like saying that the next anti-Semitic attack wasn't anti-Semitism. And then it's saying like, maybe we should be attacking people. Like, it's going to keep getting worse and worse and worse.
And you just saw that, right? Like, the Club Q reaction was the first time that after a mass shooting, the GOP, some of them have basically said, yeah, they deserved it. And I think it's okay to kill people. And granted, they're not like in elected office. Like, Jenna Ellis isn't in elected office, but Marjorie Taylor Greene is, and Paul Gosar is. These are people who also associate with people like Nick Fuentes, and are effective white nationalists. So yeah, it's getting worse and worse. And I'm just like waiting. I don't know what we're waiting for, right? I don't know what we're waiting for.
Maybe it's not getting worse, because it always has been there. It just history, it goes in waves, ebbs and flows, and now it's just in the open again, and we're seeing it. So it's not worse than it was at any other time in American history. We're just seeing it in a certain way right now. In fact, it's better, I would argue, than it has been ever before, because the majority of people, I think, when they're not being radicalized and brainwashed, are pretty sensible and progressive, I would say.
I mean, I'm reminded of a clip of a Trump supporter dressed in an all red Punisher outfit, which was like, okay, bro, do you? yelling, very mad at another Trump supporter who was dressed in a KKK hood. Like he was just an open Klan member. And the Punisher guy was like, no, see, that's what gives us a bad name. We're not like outwardly racist. We're inwardly racist, you know? And it was very funny, but look, I'll take that divide. I'll take Punisher dude over an open Klansman. That we can maybe work with.
And even, is it controversial to say an open Klansman over someone who doesn't hide their face? Like, I feel like Trump supporters now, it's like, oh, I miss when they covered their faces, when they were embarrassed about their racism and bigotry. And now they're like out in the open, less like the Tiki Nazis.
That's true. Exactly.
I'll take a Klansman over a Tiki Nazi.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes.
I mean, don't quote me.
I mean, it's the same. It's the same thing as like, I think all billionaires should be back in top hats. I've made this claim on this show before, so we can identify them. The fact that they're wearing hoodies is in and of itself a problem. But anyway, let's move on because I want to play a little clip. Jena's got a second season of her show Indefensible. It's a true crime show, but not one that you would necessarily expect. One that actually goes a little bit deeper and isn't hung up on all the salacious details. And I want to ask Jena specifically why, but let's just play a little clip from specifically about criminalizing pregnant people. Hey, new moms. Not that is
like,
that is
do that?
Not the clip. Oh no. Okay, let's play this clip and you can explain it to me later.
We need to be doing more to address the conditions that are triggering violence. So we have data that says that economics motivate violence. And when you alleviate people's economic stress, they are less likely to be violent.
Here's $50. Don't beat your wife today.
Not exactly. I would say, here's a living wage. Let's see if that alleviates some of the stress on your family.
Give a man a fish. Maybe he'll still beat the shit out of his wife. Teach a man to fish. Maybe a wave could come by. Maybe he falls off the boat, drowns. Wife and kids are safe.
I am in no way advocating for killing people who abuse their partners.
He fell.
Indefensible, Thursday.
Okay.
All right. So the show, I was given an opportunity to make a true crime show. I wanted to make something a little different than a true crime show because I'm kind of burnt out by true crime. I feel like it's a little problematic and exploitative and everybody's doing it. So our show uses true crime kind of as like a Trojan horse to bring in true crime watchers. And then we make the show more about the systemic issues that enabled the injustice. For that particular episode, it was a very, very challenging episode because it's about criminalized survivors, meaning somebody who kills someone as a form of self-defense, but in court, it's not thought of as self-defense. Oftentimes it's a victim of ongoing domestic violence.
Right.
And oftentimes it's women who do get harsher sentences. Typically the data is murky, but like if a guy kills a woman and their domestic partners, like, you know, he'll oftentimes kill her by strangling her, where if a woman kills a man, because she's just not as strong, it'll be premeditated. She might use a weapon, and those things make your sentence longer when you're convicted. So this episode was about this topic that's really hard to talk about because when someone kills someone, are they also a victim? And I think, you know, we're getting a better understanding of battered women syndrome and domestic violence, and men are victims of domestic violence as well. But it's very murky because at the end of the day, it's like just between two people and you weren't there and you have no idea what happens until somebody ends up dead and there's a trial to convict them. So This is Lee Goodmark, who I'm talking to, and she is a lawyer who works specifically with criminalized survivors. And we were talking about, like, you know, if the system doesn't see these people as victims, how do you help people who are in these types of situations before they end up on trial for murder? And she was talking about domestic violence and her ideas, like, you know, there are studies that show, and there's validity to this, that, you know, increasing the minimum wage, giving people economic and like just giving people universal basic income or helping them economically actually decreases domestic violence. Right. That's only part of the story though. And I'm not a statistician. I'm just like a kind of like slightly a comedian, but debatable if you watch me on people's podcasts that are on YouTube. But you know, as she was telling me this, which was valid, I'm like, that's not Trump fucking choked Melania in the elevator, or did he? Like a lot of people, Cora Lewandowski punched some woman, like a lot. I mean, the list goes on.
Rich people get away with domestic violence all the time.
Yeah, and so it's not all economics. So that was just my light way of being like, I kind of am agreeing with you, but I'm kind of trolling you because that's not the whole story.
Totally, and it's a slippery.
What that clip was.
Thank you for explaining it, and because it's a slippery slope to be like, you know, well, yeah, if we like once we get a universal basic income, and it's like, okay, slow down.
It's also an elitist argument to be like, economics is why people beat the shit out of their wives.
Right. It's a really weirdly like patronizing fucking attitude to be like, well, it's only the poor people who hit their wives, and you, as you just pointed out, that is not true.
That said, if studies show that like giving people like better paying jobs and decreasing the economic burden on their families does decrease violence, like I'm all for that too. You know what I mean? It's not, you want to make sure that it's.
Well, I think what you do with this show is also like go deeper than the salaciousness of like missing white girl syndrome, right? And the idea of, and the sort of what people love about true crime, which I don't understand at all. I don't watch true crime. I don't listen to any true crime podcasts. I don't get the fascination with murder, either doing it or hearing about it. But for sure, like your show is like, oh no, there's a reason, because there's like another layer. And what that layer is often just talking about femicide in a way that this country does not talk about femicide. And I'm reminded of two things that just happened recently. In your stand-up special, which everyone should watch on Peacock, you talk about Gabby Petito, who, if you guys remember, that young woman who was killed by her boyfriend. They were like doing the van life thing, and a police officer stopped her and got a bunch of an interview with her on his body cam. That police officer actually turned out to himself be a domestic abuser.
I'm shocked.
Shocking. No, but there's that. And then just to this week, a cop, I believe from Virginia, catfished a minor and then arrived at her house, killed her grandparents and her mom, burnt the house down, and then tried to make away with her, like steal away with her. And then he got caught by the cops and other cops. Not his homies, I guess. But like, and then was killed. I think she's okay, but oh my God, the police are also perpetrating this. And I think a lot of true crime, I mean, I don't know, but it definitely feels like it generally sets up police as like the good guys, right?
Like the propaganda. But to your point about my joke,
yes,
you were saying that it kind of called it. I had a joke about it, and then
you did.
True.
You had a joke about it. You were talking about how police are often the, I mean,
How do you train law enforcement to recognize signs of domestic violence? Do you say, hey, officer, if you see a woman who looks at you the way your wife does, arrest that man? It was a joke, but
it's a joke, but
it's true.
And you even mentioned Gabby Petito before this news came out. But like, so what stories are you looking for? Like, what do you want to, how do you like kind of like lure people in and then flip the script on them?
So, I mean, it'll be interesting if we do the show again. We had it's technically one season 1A and season 1B. I can't comment on that. But the stories that I cared about were stories like certain defenses, like episode 2 of the series is on the consent defense, which is also called the rough sex defense. And they're defenses that are not that common, but that are used when like, a typical example is like a guy kills a woman and his defense attorney says, we were having sex and it got rough and I accidentally strangled her. Our story was about that. And those defenses are like outlawed, I think, in England, Ireland. I don't know about Scotland, but they're outlawed in most of the UK and they still exist in the US. And they're bogus. I mean, people don't consent to die during sex. It's not a thing that happens. And so I wanted to cover that issue because, you know, if we care about this stuff, we can actually, I can't
believe that's
put pressure on our lawmakers to make sure that things like the consent defense don't happen in courtrooms in America. There's also the gay panic defense, which is a very controversial defense that has been outlawed in like 13 states. But that defense is a defense attorney will say, oh, my client freaked out because this person was gay and killed them. And oftentimes those defenses will result in a reduced sentence for the defendant. So it's looking at things within the criminal legal system. Junk science was one that we did in this batch of episodes. We have these ideas from shows like Law and Order of like certain things like, oh, blood spatter or lie detector tests or bite mark analysis. We watch these shows and we think these things actually are real when in reality they're not. And the I guess barrier of entry for certain sciences to be passed up as forensic sciences in courtrooms is really low, and they don't have to be like DNA is really the only type of evidence in that regard that is like pretty accurate. A lot of the other stuff isn't, and yet defense attorneys or prosecutors will use that evidence and it will sway juries and lead to miscarriages of justice. So the show's looking at different ways our criminal legal system doesn't work, and we kind of, each episode is like one case that touches on like a larger theme. And the whole goal is for all of you who would ever be on a jury to understand just kind of how things work and how they don't work. And that somebody who might be an expert witness might actually be full of shit.
Yeah.
Who's just like an expert witness for hire.
Yeah, I mean, it's fitting that Olayemi is going to be my next guest because she's got a lot of experience with this as a public defender and all these BS excuses.
And it's on both sides.
What are real and what are real and what aren't real, right?
Yeah.
And what she's seen and what she hasn't. Yeah.
Yeah. And like prosecutors do shady shit all the time. Defense attorneys do shady shit all the time. The one thing that I've learned, because I really didn't think about, you don't really think about the criminal legal system until you're in it, unless you're a prosecutor, a defense attorney, or a judge. But the one thing that I really have learned is like the theatricality of the criminal legal system, just the bells and whistles that both sides will pull out to make their case. And I just didn't realize like how it really is like theater for the jury.
Like how many prop comics there are.
For real. We've done a couple cases in Florida, and one defense attorney was talking about using like VR, giving like the jury VR headsets to try to make his case. I mean, it's really crazy. Yeah.
Well, you did VR in your other show, Soft Focus.
I did do VR in Soft Focus.
It was a VR experience of being sexually assaulted, and you used a hot dog and put it on a man's arm while he had a VR headset. And I think that's the best moment of television maybe ever.
Thank you. We had vegetarian hot dogs for the vegetarians too. Oh, you should put
still
the link
supposed to be a dick, y'all. We will.
That was one of my favorite segments I've ever done. That show was way more playful because we weren't talking to victims' families.
No, but this, I think you write a great line in this, and everyone go to Jena's Instagram to check out the clips if you need any excuse to then just bite the bullet and get AMC Plus, or just watch it on AMC Plus, y'all. You can also on YouTube, all the episodes are there and you can watch them. But you got to get AMC Plus. Follow Jena Friedman on Twitter, and then
for the last week of Twitter.
For the last week of Twitter, follow Jena, and then also Jena Friedman on Instagram. Just double checking that is your Instagram. And any last things, Jena?
It's really nice to see you. What?
It's good to see you. We'll talk again. We talk often, and we have private bitch sessions. If you didn't figure
they're
that
the
out.
same. The private bitch sessions are exactly. Maybe I have more makeup for those, but they're exactly. And thank you for whoever complimented my microphone. I'm not sleeping, so I'm just all over the place. But yeah, that's all. You guys just got a window into our private bitch sessions on this public one.
Indeed, it is.
Oh my God, you're doing the face.
Shit is no good. I'm doing the face of the show. Oh my God, I'm a mom. Why? Jena Friedman, we love you. Everyone, check out her show, and also check out her stand-up special, Lady Killer, on Peacock. So fucking funny, so good. I'm sorry to see her go, but just sort of sliding in. I hope to bring in public defender at the Legal Aid Society, political commentator, writer, and abolitionist thinker, Olayemi Olurin. How are you?
Good. I'm good. Happy to be here.
Thank you for being here. I'm sure you caught a little bit of that discussion with Jena, but in terms of like these weird defenses that often prop up, like honestly femicide, like domestic violence and femicide, and then are perpetrated and doubled down on by the state, by the cops too. I find that really interesting. I don't know, any thoughts about on that and like things like that consent defense and other bullshit that ends up like protecting abusers?
I think yes. I mean, here's the reality is, like, in general, I'm not a person who cares for true crime or these kinds of things because they're just not representative of the legal system in general. They make us think about things that you're just not going to see very often. Like, if you've represented 1,000 people in the system, you chances are you don't see anything like that. What you see is mostly crimes of poverty. Over 80% of things that are in the criminal system are misdemeanors, non-violent crime, traffic offenses. So for me, it just isn't really representative of the whole. Most things just never see a trial, never see a hearing. You never get to any defenses of any kind. That's why we have the pre-trial system we have. We usually railroad things, unfortunately, where people are just being arrested for general crimes of poverty and forced to plea out before it ever takes it there.
Right. The stuff that doesn't make it to television, the stuff that's never going to get sold. But yeah, I mean, and and I think that often plays into the narrative and the idea that there is more violent crime than there actually is, right? Or that there is more crime generally, because that's the stuff that's making headlines. That's what we're hearing about. It's funny because you're in New York, correct?
Yep.
So I remember I visited, in March of last year, and like I get, when you get in the cab and like the fucking whatever, the television is just like blaring at you, the little screen is telling you, and it's just like in the span of half an hour, it was like the most absurd crimes that it just happened. It was like man runs into bodega with monkey and also then slits someone's throat. And I was like, what the fuck is going on? It was like, it just was like this advertisement for like New York is full of crime,
Yeah. Dog whistling.
Yeah. And I think that played into the midterms narrative as well. A lot of people were like, well, people are worried about crime. And yet we didn't really see that play out.
Yeah, it absolutely did play into the narrative. So there are several things, right? Whenever you look at places, they like to highlight on places like New York City, Chicago, places where the criminal systems have been completely made around incarcerating and policing Black and brown people. And then they highlight those and make it out to be Gotham City all the time. And what I find fascinating, right, is one, New York City is a place with almost 10 million people, like 10 million people in the city, 42% of which identify as purely white. And yet Rikers, a pretrial detention center, is made up of 90% Black or brown people, right? So it's not lost upon me exactly what kind of system we have there. And then also, with the kind of fear-mongering you see around crime, bail reform, all these things, people wouldn't realize that, one, these red areas, these rural areas have way more crime per capita. One, people don't realize that. Or two, they do hysterics around bail reform in a place like New York City. They do it in a place like Chicago. But in New Jersey, right there, Governor Christie could get it off. A Republican governor can completely abolish the cash bail system in 2014 without a peep. And so... Right. And what I always find interesting is, even if you pretend like New York City is Gotham City, like they try to make us out to be with the constant crime hysteria and fear mongering about crime, New York spends more money on policing than anywhere else. So what is the argument, right? And that's why it's a system to line one's own pockets. It's not a coincidence that our mayor, a cop, Eric Adams, spends all his time constantly fear mongering about crime, which you would think would be absurd when you think of it like, well, it's your party that's in power. You're harming your own administration. You see what happened with Hochul and Zeldin being as close as they were, and how New York fared. Right. And how New York fared because of these things. And it wouldn't make sense unless you understand that that's how they increase these budgets, right? New York, the NYPD gets over $10.4 billion in spending. And even though Eric Adams made cuts to everything this year, he gave them $90 million more. And while they cut people, they fired from the schools, they fired from all these different programs, they cut the parks, they cut funding on every single thing. They still hired 1,000 more cops in the subways, more cops, more money to Rikers, and all these different things. So there's a concerted effort, and it does harm us. Like people said, Lee Zeldin was able to just use Eric Adams, just invoke Eric Adams on the campaign trail. And then you see that from the Post, you see it from the New York Times. And then once the midterms are over, you see what you got yesterday with New York Times being like, hey, actually turns out the media played a large role in stoking crime and this crime wave as they look around at everybody but themselves. But there was actually none of this, true crime. It's just people feeling afraid. And it's like, oh, I wonder who did that.
Yes. I mean, I think we can blame Jena and her show. And I think all the true crime podcasts out there. No, obviously I'm joking, but yeah, that's especially with New York is just fascinating. And these cities, which yes, are run by Democrats often, but again, it's just power. It's parties in power. And I think you saw that with, as you mentioned, the ways that Republicans made gains in New York, the ways New York Democrats dropped the ball as far as keeping Congress, because it's not about actual policies, it's about power. And one thing that police do, in my opinion, and you've seen this in the cases that you work in, the life experience you have, but like honestly, what cops do is enforce the economic like disparity. They enforce the color line. They enforce racism. They enforce poverty. They are there to protect property. They are there to protect that 42% of white people. They're there to protect the gentrifiers, and they're not there to protect everybody. And we see that time and time again. And they are also there to kind of clean up when Democratic mayors fuck up, or any mayor, right? It's like, oh, you didn't build enough affordable housing. Just sweep up the homeless.
Right,
just,
like Eric Adams is currently doing. He literally just announced this morning that they are going to be involuntarily committing homeless people to literally involuntarily committing them in the hospital. It's absurd, the level of draconian abuse that just happens in plain sight.
Right. No, I mean, Eric Adams was like the worst. At least I feel a lot better over here in LA that we didn't get a Rick Caruso billionaire mayor.
Y'all got blessed.
Yeah, seriously. But I did want to ask, because in this narrative, a lot of folks there is this mirage of crime, which doesn't necessarily exist. And then at the same time, we're on the other side of one of the biggest mass movements of our lifetimes, right? With the Black Lives Matter movement of 2020 in the wake of George Floyd's murder. And yet what's changed, right? Like what's changed on a specifically on a federal policy level? Not a lot. We can't get even the most basic reforms, and no one's saying the word defund and no one's saying abolition, but the most basic reforms passed. Maybe just your reflections on that. Like what happens? Like what does that actually do? Has that energy gone elsewhere? Can we celebrate some of the small local victories in terms of reform?
So I think I understand how people have a tendency to feel discouraged, but I think you only feel discouraged if you make the mistake of looking at this movement as starting in 2020 when it didn't. Everything that's happening, there are no new pains. Everything that's happening has been happening, right? These have been the same communities, the same neighborhoods that have been being policed, have been being profiled, have been being incarcerated, have been experiencing police brutality, have been doing that since policing's inception in this country. So that's not new. Police shoot and kill over 1,000 people each year. That has nothing to do with the lesser level of brutality. That's not the people that they kill in other ways. That's not the deaths that they cover up, right? So that is just something that is our constant. And if you see it as like, oh, 2020 was our first, like, oh, this major wave, and then nothing happened, and you know what I mean, in your mind, you're going to see it like that. But if you understand and recognize even the broader picture, how long something's happened, even the fact that the ideas you're espousing now, the fact we're casually discussing abolition, it's even something to fight about. The fact that these people are so threatened by defund the police that they need to fight you on it. Because at the end of the day, if something's not effective, people ignore it. If it can't pick up traction, if it is that they would leave it alone. But the fact that they constantly feel the need to beat us down on it and talk about it and try to discourage people as much as possible. If a movement had lost steam, if a movement was so ineffective, they wouldn't talk about it. That's just period, point blank, done. So the fact that there's this constant effort to quell support or convince people that what they're doing is not worthwhile tells me that it is. So that's my one there. And the two is like, you can't only see your gains, right? In a movement where what you're trying to do is keep people alive, right? Like if you even just look at police brutality, if what I'm trying to do is actually address the system that makes that possible, not just I think the problem is people assume everybody is their ally because they're at a protest and they're outraged about the video they saw. They're outraged about what happened with George Floyd. But if you're still in a society that has fundamentally educated you to believe that this criminal system is synonymous with justice, that this system is still in the business of accomplishing justice, even when you see incidents like this, you think the system made a mistake. You think it's an outlier. You think, ultimately the system is still here to do that. And you don't actually oppose the system or the different things that made that scenario possible. You oppose that outcome. So then people don't realize that they process it as we should all be on the same side. Why is this still happening? And it's because all of those people are still fundamentally invested in the system because we're all being educated and indoctrinated with that. So to me, it requires a larger, you have to step back and say, hey, let's start talking about the system as a whole. Let's talk about where the police are, why the police are even in these positions to be harassing a George Floyd. Why are the police responding to a Tamir Rice? Why are the police, being the ones for these mental health checks? It requires us to do that. So I don't look at it as discouraging because quite frankly, we've looked from a time people like me or anybody is perceived as a Black advocate or a Black activist, or you're talking about abolition and stuff. You could not do it in mainstream America. You know what I mean? It's a dangerous affair, not so the fact that you even can present these, you can fight about bail reform, you're doing a lot. And I think, too, you got to remember that there's hundreds of thousands of people you've kept out of jail, when you pass these modest bail reforms, but you can't see the lives that didn't, you know what I mean? The tragedies you've prevented.
Sure. You only hear about the one person who went on and recommitted a crime. You don't hear about the hundreds of thousands of people who were able to be with their families or were able to provide or were able to keep their employment because they didn't have unattainable bail in order to be free. Exactly. I think that's a really good point to take the long view. And it's also a massive, massive undertaking. It's not, the criminal justice system is a massive system. I mean, 2 million people in or out of prison or jail, right? Or on parole. It is huge. One of, again, the biggest prison population next to Iran and China, I believe, or maybe even more than China. So, it's funny, we're going up against Iran in the World Cup now, but we have a lot of things in common, in fact, our countries, which is lock up a huge segment of the population. I did want to ask you, what about you? What was your journey to prison abolition or to calling yourself an abolitionist or talking about these issues? Was it when you started in law school or what was that for you?
So how I decided to become a public defender in general was in college. I was writing my thesis called Colored Bodies Matter, Our Relationship Between Bodies and Power. And my thesis advisor, a white woman, Dr. Kathleen Sullivan, whom I love, called me a gap scholar, but in an affectionate way, but it's a term in academia to me, and someone who points out the problems, but they don't necessarily have a solution, which is something that's necessary and is very necessary in academia. They're not. But I remember thinking it's insufficient for me as a Black person to go become a Black attorney. And in a criminal system where my people are so disproportionately, profiled, incarcerated, and represented in that way, but we make up less than 5% of the legal, their actual legal profession, I felt like it was woefully insufficient for me to not do that. So that's how I became a public defender. But as far as abolition, my thesis advisor, because everything that I was always espousing, she goes, "You sound like you would like abolition." I was like, "What you mean, abolish all jails? And that was as somebody who's literally academically believes devoutly that this criminal system is racist and all of this. But still, when I heard abolition, I was like, then she gave me Our Prisons Obsolete by Angela Davis. And I, just even realizing, hey, it wasn't always like this. This prison system, even though you're raised to believe it's like water and air and all that, it's a man-made institution. This massive prison industrial complex, we did not always have this. This is not the norm. I come from a country where we do not police and incarcerate a significant amount of our population, especially based on class and race and all these different kinds of things. And I didn't become an abolitionist overnight, but eventually, and that's kind of to me how I know never to get frustrated in this work, because I can't think of somebody more dogmatic and stubborn than my own self. And the fact that over time, you hear something enough because you come to change your worldview, but it's not overnight. And I think sometimes we make the mistake of assuming, people will DM me and say, "Hey, I'm going to go debate with my mom or my cousin that's a Republican or something. What thing can I, what thing can I tell them that'll make them really get?" Nothing. You are not going to tell there's nothing you're going to tell any person that is going to make them just completely relinquish their entire worldview. You know what I mean?
Sure.
You could start some cracks in the foundation and it'll erode over time, but it's over time.
People love cops. I mean, juries love cops. People love cops. They buy into a lot of like the propaganda that is just so seamlessly infused into our culture. And, you know, I mean, you see Black Lives Matter signs on the same, you know, lawns as you'll see Rick Caruso signs. And you're like, in what fucking world do you think a billionaire who's like going to get tough on homelessness isn't just going to unleash more cops to crack people's skulls? Like, I don't understand your worldview. And it is very much a bipartisan, doesn't matter if you're a liberal, conservative, it's money, very much related to money. And in my opinion, very much related to your own personal experiences with law enforcement. Do you feel safe even calling cops? Is your community policed or not? Is your community over policed, right? Has a cop ever arrested your family member? Do you have family in jail currently or in prison currently? And these are all things that disproportionately white people will say, no, I don't have any family members, and I don't see a lot of police in my neighborhood, and I don't feel like I'm in the occupied West Bank, you know, over here.
Right.
Which is why it's easy to talk and it's easy to be like, defund the police is bad, but it's very different when you live it. And for me, my experience was, you know, coming up in New York in early 2000s, anti-war activist, global justice activist, and then having friends who were involved in prison abolition work through the organization Critical Resistance, you know, lots of love for them. And I was like, completely abolish this. That seems okay. I'm not quite there. I'm still friends with you guys. We'll hang, but like, I wasn't quite there. And over time and learning about it and also understanding that is not my lived experience, but I cannot graft my subjective experience onto what is effectively a objectively systemic failed system, right? A racist system that I have not borne the brunt of. And so putting myself there as well.
Yeah. I mean, to me, there are certain commonsensical principles that I think, you know, get us there eventually. And it's, first of all, we know that the safest communities are not the most policed communities. That's just the truth. The safest communities are the most resource communities. All of the communities with the highest police presence are the communities that they deem high crime areas. And they continue to be the high crime areas, the most under-resourced, the most impoverished communities generation after generation. So this is obviously just not what it does. And the second thing is America puts more money. America puts over $277 billion into policing each year. America puts more money into policing and mass incarceration than anywhere else. And I don't know another country that constantly sensationalizes and fearmongers its own population in the way that America does. It's the reason why so many people, the people that constantly talk to you about feeling afraid are the same people telling you that all this crime and danger isn't in their communities. They will say, oh, it's only in the Black areas, it's into this. So then what are you afraid of? Why do the police need to be in your neighborhood? You're not the ones who've experienced crime. It's not a mistake or it's not a coincidence that the actual survivors of crime, the actual people in these communities that experience it are the ones that are advocates of criminal justice reform, are the ones that are telling you, hey, no, this is actually what we need. Instead of putting money into policing us and incarcerating us, put money into our housing, put money into our education, put money into our healthcare, put money into our infrastructure so that we can actually alleviate the root causes of crime, because this doesn't do anything and we don't feel safe. And they know that. So for me, it comes to be what is the obvious, sensible conclusion, because at the end of the day, as much as people criticize, you know, abolition or criminal justice reform or any kind of alternative method to policing, they've never done it. You've never tried it. So according to you, the only thing we do is policing and mass incarceration, and it's failing. According to you, its proponents, you know?
One thing I like to think about, and it's similar to that, is and just a parallel I like to draw in my mind is around climate change, right? There's a movement called to keep it in the ground, right? And it's led by indigenous folks around the world who are like, just keep it in the ground. Stop exploiting oil. Stop extracting. Just stop whole cloth. Now, to some folks, that seems really extreme. Obviously, to this administration, they're like, no, we've got to dig a lot more so that eventually we'll get renewables. You know, like but right now we got a war in Russia. Let's dig, you know, drill. Yes, Saudi Arabia, please give us more oil. But I think it is not, I think that's a goal. You have to have a vision and you have to have a goal. And like you're saying, your thesis, your professor, who oversees your
Dr. Sullivan, my thesis
advisor.
advisor.
Advisor, your thesis advisor being like, okay, well, how do we get there? And I think that you can't necessarily take these steps without having like a where are we going, and I think where we're going when it comes to climate is keeping the fossil fuels that are in the earth because we know they're going to kill us. And where we're going on prisons is abolishing them. But in my mind, yes, a remaking, a revisioning, a re-envisioning, but this system needs to go. And this system has proven itself. And same with the healthcare system. I believe in Medicare for all. I don't believe in reform because I don't believe Kaiser, fucking Blue Shield, and these private insurance companies give a shit about reform. They don't want to reform. You cannot reform this system. You have to abolish the private healthcare system. You have to abolish the prison system, in my view. So these are the visions. And so I equate those. I think folks somehow are more allergic to that idea when it comes to criminal justice or the legal system than they are to when they talk about the climate or when they talk about healthcare, But these are all systems that are broken. So we need to see them, similarly.
Absolutely we do.
Anyway, anything else? I mean, we could talk for a while about this, but I guess, are there shining examples for you? I'm thinking of West Hollywood, which is funny, and we talked about it on this show because O.J. Simpson, of all people, was like, West Hollywood's defunding the police, and that is wrong. But West Hollywood basically moved, I believe they took out 2 sheriffs and use that money to employ, I think, 10 mental health workers in that neighborhood, which is huge. And like, I'm like, oh, how did 2 sheriff salaries pay for 10 people? Because we overpay these cops. And
the cops make more than the public defender. Correct. The literally just the court staff, the court officers make more than the public defenders, and that is also not an accident, right? Like the underfunding, the think about it like this. We have a criminal system. Public defenders are the only constitutionally mandated attorneys, right? That poor people need to be represented by somebody. And the vast majority of everyone in our criminal system is represented by a public defender. So that tells you something about the exact population we're policing, because to qualify for my services, you have to be beneath the poverty line. And that's virtually everybody in court. And then if you take those attorneys that have to represent the bulk of everyone in the system and you pay them less than everybody, what kind of representation do those people get? You know what I mean? What are they able to do? And that keeps the system churning in this way. It's why everything has to be pled out. It's why everything, people sit in jail. They stack it in this way on purpose.
One thing I think people need to also remember is we talk about private prisons, and you might know the stat specifically, but yes, private prisons are awful. No one should be making money off of, someone who's incarcerated. And especially when you look at the immigration detention systems, that is, it's disproportionately high. But in terms of like overall, like it's a small percentage of the number of prisons and jails.
Distraction. Private prison is exactly what I referenced earlier when I said the problem with teaching us that the system is ultimately just. And so when we get things, we can focus on the other thing. The private prisons argument was raised as something to be able to distract you from the rest of the prisons being bad. It's so that you can maintain this idea, we need it all. The problem is these private prisons. The problem is that we have these for-profit systems. Public and private prisons in America overall produce over $11.6 billion in goods for America. Just period. $11.6 billion goods, public and private. Rikers is a pretrial detention center. People have not been incarcerated and have not been convicted of a crime. And yet all those people were forced to make all the hand sanitizers that we got in New York City and couldn't get it. We're not allowed to use it themselves, couldn't socially distance, but that's who make it. In America, there's a reason why I say we have to start calling things what they are and not using these euphemisms that are intentionally meant to play it down. Instead of saying, mass incarceration is a new slavery. It's just slavery. If slavery is a system by which we take people, we strip them of their freedom and their civil liberties, and we make them work for another person's labor, another person's financial gain against their own control, that's what we're doing. We've taken, America incarcerates 2 million people, 400,000 of which are being held pre-trial. America makes up 5% of the world's population, but 25% of the world's incarcerated population. The average state pays incarcerated people between 13 and maybe 50 cents for all labor, but 7 states don't pay them anything altogether, completely drop the pretense. And then these people are also stripped of their right to vote in most places. And then after that, in terms of fines and fees, because people say, oh, they did the crime, they did the time, and they don't realize that all these people, which we've already recognized, are poor people, and they're living beneath the poverty line, are not just being incarcerated, but they're being charged fines and fees. The same court that recognizes that they have no money, that's why they have a public defender. It's the same court that's going to set bail on them after just acknowledging they have no money, and then hit them with all kinds of fines and fees for the criminal conviction that they're going to force them to have to take, because otherwise they're going to have to sit in pretrial detention for umpteen for however long. So it is deliberately set up to like that, because it is slavery. That's what it is.
Right. Absolutely. You also, there's the new Jim Crow that you kind of referenced, although you're arguing it is just Jim Crow.
Yeah.
And also, sorry, Angela Davis's book that I'm now blanking on.
Our prison's obsolete.
Our prison's obsolete. Thank you. And also, everyone, just watch The Wire if you don't understand how any of this works. Just fucking watch the show The Wire. But we've got a comment, and I just, because we maybe didn't finish the envisioning, but Hal Wasserman on YouTube says, I still don't understand what the alternative to prison is. For you, what does that look like? And are we there even yet at that stage of thinking of that?
So abolition is a vision of tomorrow, right? Like we are aware that they're not going to go and close all the courts and shut all the jails down and open all the cells tomorrow. But it's this idea that instead of continuing to invest in mass incarceration, we need to take that money that we've put into policing, that we've put into prisons, and instead give it to these under-resourced communities to actually alleviate the issues and the social ills that they are struggling with. Because the reality is, as much as people would like to pretend it's something else and pretend it's just all these bad people, all the poor people are just bad. It's not true. All right. The majority of everything in our criminal system are crimes of poverty. So instead of making the policy decision to continue criminalizing these people, instead, let's actually alleviate the needs for this. And eventually we will do away with the need for prisons, because the reality is lots of places, America's mass incarceration is not normal. It's not the usual thing that everybody lives in. I'm from a country where we do not, the average Black man between 18 and 29 years old in America will have experienced being arrested or incarcerated at some point in time. That's crazy. That is absolutely crazy. And that is not a normal thing for other places, right? Even when you look at California had maybe 9 prisons for like 100 years. And then suddenly they made an executive decision at the, get Nixon, get Reagan, get these people, boom, hundreds of prison constructions, So that's what happens. They create these structures and they fill them, but they're policy choices, right? We didn't always incarcerate for these things. We didn't always do it this way, but we're choosing to do it because that is a system that we're maintaining. So it's about divesting from it and modeling other methods. There are lots of countries that actively make a policy choice to have prisons be rehabilitative. And that's often people will point to places like Denmark and all of this, but what's also important to note there is they have white population, you know what I mean? In places where there is there's the congruity of that white population. Yeah, I'm gonna give you a certain kind of care, but in our criminal system where we police particular populations, we opt to have a system that we know is strife with abuse and strife with struggle. So we just model the rest of the world that is not following this barbaric system.
Totally. And it is part and parcel of our unique history, of slavery. And this is we are descendants of that original crime that still has not been rectified. And so here we are again still. But I think that basically, and similarly, it is divestment, it is defunding, it is moving money out of it. That shit just doesn't fit on a little slogan, And I think it is important to know that these conversations, they're not made for CNN necessarily, but the beginnings of them can be. And I think that's what is really great. And the moving of the money. And if we stop, if we actually invest in communities, if we actually don't further criminalize poverty, let's just try moving money in different places and see what happens. Just as a joke, just as a little gag, a little gag. Let's do it for 5 years. And if it's still good, we'll do it for 10. And then if after 10, it's all bad, we'll be like, you know what? Let's go back to incarcerating everybody, over policing. My bad. Fucking George Zimmerman and Kyle Rittenhouse can, we'll hold them up as deities. And y'all win. You know what I mean? Other people win. But let's just give us 5 years. Give us 10 years.
I have a piece coming out soon in like a week or two for Teen Vogue about this called "Mass Incarceration is Insane," and it's basically this. That's because it is, right. They're like, and if insanity is doing the same thing repeatedly and expecting, different results, that's what this is for us to constantly. It's interesting whenever what you want to do is something new from the method they are insisting, according to its proponents, is failing, right? If crime is apparently so hysterical, but we continue to put more money and expand this system. Whenever, you want to do something else, here's all the hysteria, but yeah, you have no problem continuing to mass incarcerate entire populations in specific communities, despite the fact that it's done nothing to alleviate the conditions of those communities or the crime that those communities are the ones that you say experience it. Because again, white people and all these people that are the leaders of mass incarceration, its biggest cheerleaders, are the main people telling you they have no actual skin in the game. They have no lived experiences with it. So
yeah, absolutely. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And that's exactly what we're doing on all of these fronts. But Olayemi, I appreciate your clarity, your lucidity, your ability to sort of like cut through and kind of like go into the fray in a lot of ways. It's a lot of work that you already are doing as your job, but this is like a whole other, and the fact that like you being on the Breakfast Club, which you were, like the fact that you're on those shows is progress and is cool as hell.
Yes.
And you know what, and if it breaks through a little bit, even if a seed is planted, then that's good.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me.
Everybody follow Olayemi on Twitter, but also on Instagram. Miss Olurin, am I pronouncing your last name right?
Yes, you are. And my Substack, Olurinati, I publish an essay every month. I've got to go when I get off of here, I have to start writing the one that I need to have written and published.
Olurinati. Oh my god, I thought Frantifa was good, but Olurinati.
I know that fire, right? I love it.
I need like a jacket with that. Thank you so much. Take very good care. Please come back. And thank you all for being here. We have one more segment. Because I'm not just bitching about nursing. I'm bitching about the World Cup. And I want to talk about it a little bit with me, myself, and I. But there's another segment after this for the Frantifa. Talking about China. What's going on? Let's get into it a little bit. Patreon.com/Bitchuation Room. Get access to that. There's protests. What does that mean? Is anything changing? I don't know. But for now, I'm curious. How did the USA-Iran game go? I'm assuming, here's what I want to say. I want to say it held at 1-0. That's what I think it did. But I don't know. I think it held at 1-0. Yep, 1-0. I was right. They were looking like crap in the second half. It was just everyone was looking not great. But if diplomacy were decided by penalties, no, by soccer or football, what would that look like? This is my diplomacy cup. Brief little digression before I get into what I think. But meanwhile, you guys think about it. If certain countries faced other countries, what would the prize be should they win? Do you know what I'm saying? Is it reparations? Do they have to eat their other country's national food for a month? What do they do? But a little digression, the World Cup's being held in Qatar, and I talked about this a bit last week. And I'm seeing two things simultaneously. I think, one is it's pretty dope that it's being held in the Middle East for the first time, the World Cup. Obviously, the Middle East is like hugely popular in terms, soccer's so big there. And also you have a major contradiction, right? You have huge crackdowns on freedom of speech in terms of people with rainbow flags or armbands that express solidarity with the LGBTQ plus community, journalists who want to film things. There is a total information crackdown happening in Qatar right now. And then at the same time, you have all these like Palestine freedom flags, right? And there's people who are like advocating for Palestinian human rights. There's like Israeli television crews trying to like catch other like catch people like, what do you think about Israel, and like trying to get folks in like a like to do anti-Semitism, I guess, or like to be anti-Israel. And they're just seeing a lot of solidarity for Palestine instead, and it's great. And so it's I think it's really interesting because you're like, usually you might see more support for the LGBTQ plus community and a silencing of Palestinians. Here you're seeing the opposite. And I think two things can be true at once, right? We can support the fact that it's awesome that the World Cup is being held in the Middle East for the first time. It's cool that like Saudi Arabia, for example, beat Argentina, even though I got pissed at that. It's cool to see Iran, you know, and I have a thought on that, but it's cool to, it's important and awesome to have this like true international competition over a sport. The shit ain't over nukes. It's over a fucking sport. I love that. And two things can be true. You can have a first time in history cup in the Middle East and have a lot of fucking problems with that country as being homophobic, having all these draconian anti-gay laws, and then kind of being cooler on Palestine. Those things can exist and we can point them out without being either patronizing or like, for lack of a better term, imperialist or, you know, sort of Western centric in our understanding of it. We can be progressively lifting up all of those voices that are marginalized. And I think the one struggle that encapsulates how we can hold 2 or 3 or 5 things at once when it comes to human rights is the struggle for human rights in Iran. And I think the fact that that shit does not come from the United States, that shit does not come from any imperial Western power. It does not come from, of course, not the Ayatollah. It comes from the people. It comes from the people of Iran and the women of Iran who are rising up. And in solidarity, the Iranian national team is refusing to sing the anthem. In solidarity, you have people like my man, I don't know his name, but taking the field during, I believe, the Uruguay Portugal game, running around with a shirt that says respect for Iranian women. And he's got a rainbow flag, which the rainbow flag, by the way, in other countries, in Europe especially, is a flag of peace. So here it's LGBTQ plus rights. Over there it's peace, whichever it is. I love it. And so I think no greater struggle can unite us and simmer the bullshit narratives down of your country's this, your country's that, the Middle East is backwards, the Middle East is not backwards, da-da-da-da. Fuck it. Support Iranian women, you know, still carrying the torch for the heinous murder of Mahsa Amini, and understanding that we can support human rights, and it doesn't have to play into anyone's narrative. It just is human rights. It doesn't have to play into an anti-Islam agenda. It doesn't have to play into a pro-Western agenda. It just is. It's just people trying to fucking live their goddamn lives. And yeah, I hope y'all listened to the episode we did with Zara Nourbash, who was wonderful. And she's an Iranian American comedian and had a lot of thoughts on hijab, etc. So that's just the thing I wanted to mention off the bat. But I think, okay, here's my lineups. France v. Senegal. Senegal gets to, if they win, gets to restructure France's economy, because Senegal's economy has been restructured a million times. And restructured always means like, you're going to have to give less to people and more to corporations. So France's economy is restructured by Senegal, and Senegal gets French wine for $1 a bottle. Settled. Australia versus England, if that ever happens. Australia finally gets rid of the monarchy. Just, it's enough, no more. We don't pledge allegiance to the king or whatever. It's done. We're donezo. That being said, if England wins against Australia, King Charles's face has to go on the flag. You can find a place for it. You could like hide it in the in one of the star or the stripes over there. You know how it's like the Union Jack in a larger, The Australian flag looks like one flag is like fucking another flag. Like, I don't get what's happening there. But you got to put King Charles's face on it if England wins. Brazil v. Portugal, obviously, there's a lot of reparations for colonialism that has to happen. There could be bigger reparations here, maybe reparations for slavery if Portugal loses. But if Portugal loses, here's what I think. I think that it has to change the name of its capital, Lisbon, to Lis Brazil. Is that... Anyway, just for like a year. Oh, Lis Brazil. USA versus Japan. If Japan wins, they get to drop an atomic bomb on Mar-a-Lago. Yes, there will be repercussions. It'll probably extend, A-bombs. You can't really control what they're going to do, but it's the least we can do or they can do after we dropped a couple of nukes on them. And look, if they win, if they beat the United States, I think it's only fair. Holland versus Senegal. Holland actually was one of the many countries that also colonized Senegal. If Holland loses, they have to finally stop doing Sinterklaas, which is the black Santa that's like really problematic and weird. No more Sinterklaas, Dutch, okay? You stop it. It's weird. It's fucking weird. And obviously USA versus Mexico. If Mexico wins, open borders, but for like a month, maybe a week. Open borders for a week. Free flow of goods, free flow of people. Just anyone and anything comes and goes. But a 1 week, it's like the purge, but open borders. I mean, obviously, if you're a Republican watching, you already think there are open borders, but there aren't. So, curious to know your thoughts. If Japan wins, Michael Gonzalez says, just replace McDonald's with ramen houses. I would love that. Oh my God. Mick Ramen. Todd Roy says, no more wooden shoes if the Dutch wins, if the Dutch lose. Galfar71, can we cut Florida from the mainland first? Kind of like getting a vasectomy. I love it. I mean, I've been wanting to do that for a while. But let's see. If England wins, kangaroos will riot. Sure. Aussies should get rid of Vegemite. Is Vegemite? It's an English thing, right? I can't remember if Marmite. There's a lot of ites coming out of the UK. We've got Marmite, Vegemite, termite. I don't know what else is a mite, but apparently it's all edible and it sounds disgusting. Stone to the Bone Dragon said, FIFA is just another pawn, an excuse to profit and capitalize. It is, but I really like soccer. It's so fun. It's so fun to watch. And I really like watching it in Spanish. And I love the announcers. I love the, the goal announcement, the grito. I just like it. And I like watching it. And the players are hot. Okay, I digress. And that, guys, that's been our show. I think we have a little bit of a fart song. I think we do have a fart song. Thank you guys so much for being here. Please become patrons. I'm sorry. Let's wind this down with a fart song. Hell yeah. Oh, I didn't read comments. I'll read them in a second. Thank you so much to all the new patrons at $10 or more. Christopher Cardinal. Hell yeah. Philene Lexius. Yay. Christina Finnerty. Thank you so much. The farts are extra loud today. Turn that down. Thank you to the Twitch subs. Let's see. We got Depressed Progressive resubscribing at 1 month for tier 1. 16 months subscribe. Happy subversary, pretty mama. We missed you. Oh, thank you so much. Rialan giving out 3 community subs. That's so nice of you. You're wonderful. The Jukesters resubscribe for 1 month of tier 1. Subscribe for 3 months. Good to have you back. Good to be back, dude. Squirrely Coney resubscribe for 1 month of tier 1. Subscribe for 9 months. Squirrely Twitch baby sends a nut to Francesca. I got that. And Adam Baum resubscribing for 1 month of tier 1. Subscribe for 9 months. I love it. And Just Czar also resubscribing. You've been subscribed for 21 months. Holy shit. Is that a record? Thank you all so much for being here. A couple last comments because I apologize I didn't do it earlier. Camperman 5000, holy hell, I just heard something about people selling their breast milk to bodybuilders. I believe it. Like, you know that fucking Rogan drinks breast milk. It's disgusting. Rachel Atwood, like a cat delatching its claws from the furniture. Yeah, similar. Very difficult to delatch. Spacer Woman, thank you for normalizing the breastfeeding combo. Yeah, we need to talk about it more. It happens. It hurts. It's a lot. It's work. Bob Tridge, however, says, my mom didn't breastfeed. I was a formula baby. That's okay. We all turn out. We're all here just eking by. I don't believe it actually makes you smarter. Creative Pixie also mentioning the mom shame for breastfeeding or not breastfeeding. It's a big thing. I mean, I have it in my head. I'm like, oh no, but I don't want to use formula because then I failed, you know? And I remember my mom breastfed me for 3 months, and part of me was like when she told me that, I was like, wow, that was like not that long. She had to go back to fucking work, man. And that was before work had like places you could, you know, you could breastfeed and such. And you could, you could pump. Baby's crying, by the way. Is TYT going to make room for the Twitchuation room again? Yes, tomorrow from 2 to 3. Twitchuation room will be tomorrow from 2 to 3. Do not worry. And then thank you so much, Jeremy Justice, for the super chat saying, yesterday my neighbor's house was shot up in broad daylight. Holy shit. I support the concept of prison abolition. I'm just not sure we're there yet until we really make bigger investments in reducing poverty. That's a great point, and I appreciate you bringing it up and for your super chat. And then back to breastfeeding. Leho says, since trans women can breastfeed, cis men must be able to lactate, but cis men would not breastfeed because they're weak. An envy who chose not to yeet the teat because that's gross for me anyway. I think I understand most of what you said, but I appreciate the super chat. Beatnik, thank you for your super sticker. Todd Roy asking us to change the subject. I think that might have also been from the breast feeding convo. Anywho, you guys, appreciate y'all. Thank you so much to all the patrons. I will see you in the bonus show. Remember, we stream every Tuesday, 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern on YouTube and Twitch. Thank you to Paige, Oamek, to Maximillien, Inhoff, to Alexandra Ornes, and to Andy Vasoyan. Follow the show on Twitter at Bitchuation Pod, TikTok and Instagram at Franny Fio. And remember, y'all, fight the power, fuck the patriarchy, and don't just bitch about it, be about it. Peace.